Hello there, welcome to Doctor Who Radio Show. I'm Master 8009, and these gentlemen with me are...
Jimmy Porto from upstate New York.
Stephen Price from Wales, UK.
And in this wonderful episode of Doctor Who Radio Show, we will be talking about the very first, the original, we may say, William Hartnell, who was Doctor Who, the original, the one who allowed the show to come into life in the first place. Doctor, the first Doctor, the grumpy one, the grouch, the grandfather. William Hartnell was born near St Pancras in London in 1908. But who was the actor and also the first Doctor himself? So let's go back to the very beginning, and an unearthly child.
According to the Mirror, he didn't have much faith in the show.
Lack of faith in what way?
He didn't believe in the scripts. He didn't understand the show. And he really didn't think the show was going to be a success.
Really? So he was of the opinion that it was not worth his while or beyond his,
Well, yeah, it took, according to an article in the Mirror, it took 2 expensive lunches for them to convince him to even do it. He was successful making movie comedies, and he really didn't want to be pressed down to a television series when he was making movies.
I see. So he's a sort of stage career, really. That does seem to sort of feed into William Hartnell's portrayal in the first episode. Yes, not just standoffish because the first Doctor is wary of humans like Ian and Barbara, but apparently because that's the sort of body language and subconscious of William Hartnell at the time, that he wasn't perhaps terribly convinced it was worth his while.
Yeah.
I know a few people have said he was grumpy to work with.
But was that merely the script or William Hartnell himself, personality-wise?
William Hartnell himself.
He was a fatherless child. He never knew who his father was.
Yes, of course. He had a did he had a bad relationship with his mother out of wedlock or something?
His mother was unmarried, and his father's name was blank on the birth certificate. He tried to trace who his father was, but he never succeeded.
No, damn it. Yes, I believe that's 1908, as I said, when that sort of thing would have been absolutely out of the question, out of wedlock, and makes him a Victorian child, or at least at the start of the 20th century.
In what year did you say he was born?
1908.
1908, yeah, so he was born at the start of the century. And his mother was unwed, so he probably had a rough upbringing. He never knew who his father was.
You think that both of you fed into, the grandfather? Did he sort of take that idea of being a Victorian child and sort of put it into William Hartnell's portrayal of the first Doctor? Because he's certainly not as modern as the second Doctor or the third Doctor.
Huh. There's a scene with the second Doctor where he's explaining to Vicky about how different their life is. And that could be seen as a grandfather talking to a granddaughter.
I see. Definitely sort of 1950s at the least, because television didn't become sort of, hip and happening really to the, mid-60s, when the swing 60s happened and stuff. And it's sort of very dark and very sort of mysterious, the first episode. Not as light-hearted as, later series, really,
Right.
the first Doctor. By the time Susan, his granddaughter, had left, and Ian and Barbara had left, it had, more relaxed first Doctor, more happier, and William Hartnell had started to enjoy being a childlike inspiration for kids watching the show. He sort of got it, perhaps a little bit more.
I think he just became comfortable with the role.
Oh, in what sense?
And I think he knew the series was doing well and all.
He liked the attention and the affection that he was getting from children, and he had 2 grandchildren of his own.
Quite. I see. So when he saw that they were enjoying the show and loved the fact that Grandad was travelling through the galaxy fighting evil and giving those dastardly Daleks a piece of their own medicine, he sort of thought, well, perhaps this isn't so bad after all. It's rather curious, I think, both of you, that there was recently a new discovery. We've had the Second Doctor stories, Web of Fear and The Enemy of the World being rediscovered, but also a very rare interview on camera with William Hartnell in 1967 in their dressing room at a pantomime, and he doesn't sound at all like a Victorian person who was born, at the beginning of 20th century, just as the Victorian era was dying. But he sounds very London, very sort of Cockney almost, totally different, extraordinary, really.
Yes, he did. That's the only interview I've ever, seen him in. Seen him in any others.
A bit sort of more likeable than, the first Doctor could be.
Yeah.
I noticed in that interview, though, he had an air of creepiness as well. Yes, go on, Jimmy.
Although William Hartnell was the one who said Patrick Troughton should take over, he actually said there's only one man in England who can take over, and that's Patrick Troughton. So he saw something in Patrick Troughton that he liked as the that he thought would be great as the Doctor.
Was that, do you think, because of, well, not obviously, Patrick Troughton was a well-known actor as well as him.
Yeah, wasn't he Robin Hood?
Yes, he played Robin Hood in the 50s, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you think both Steve and Jimmy could have been due to the fact that he could see how the show could improve with a change of leading man, sort of younger? If he was critical of the show Doctor Who in the first place, that might have given him some insight into how it could possibly evolve, at least from this point of view. I think it's rather interesting that, all these first 3 Doctors were, ones who lived through the Second World War. John Pertwee was actually a sort of spy in the Second World War. Patrick Troughton survived a U-boat attack, and William Hartnell would have...
William Hartnell had a nervous breakdown during the Second World War.
Really? Thanks, mates.
Yep.
Oh, what sort of led to that sad breakdown?
I don't know. He was served in the Tank Corps. But he suffered a nervous breakdown after 18 months. I don't know. Maybe it was the war itself.
I see.
Because he did play one of his famous roles was in Carry On Sergeant.
Yes, that's correct. All of them, apart from William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, I mean, appeared in Carry On, as far as I know. John Pertwee appeared in the Navy Lark, oddly enough. But even in Carry On Sergeant and other films that he'd been doing stage and films before Doctor Who, you see a very different, more sort of happier, I suppose, actor in a sense.
Well, he did play in comedies, but he was usually playing the heavy in the comedy, or the thug, or the tough guy role, which he didn't like. He said he was always getting typecast.
Is that why?
I've got him.
Yeah.
I've got him in one film, a very old film, with Stanley Baker. I can't think of the name of the film. It's like a race. Patrick McGoon was in it.
Mm.
Oh.
And he was like the boss of the of where they were working.
Ah, that's
I can't think of the
interesting.
name of the film.
Well, that's hardly surprising, really, because the first Doctor did have an authoritarian sort of grandfather leader type character, but perhaps that's the whole point. He was kind of sick and tired of that. He wanted more fun roles, which is why he enjoyed doing the Romans so much in some episodes of the Dalek Master Plan. But apparently he didn't enjoy that, really, especially working with the Daleks again.
Hmm.
So how do you think his portrayal of the Doctor was affected by the oncoming of the swinging 60s, the arrival of Ben and Polly, who were really were swinging 60s?
Yeah, the companions were more affected than the Doctor was, although the second Doctor did have a Beatles haircut.
Ah, that's interesting, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The only snag is, though, by the time he had that haircut, the Beatles had started to change their image, really, by that point.
Yeah.
They still had a sort of Beatles haircut, but with, well, Paul McCartney did, come 66, 67, but the other Beatles had changed their sort of hairdos, growing beards and all sorts. Do you think the fact that he was having to work with more youthful companions and less serious ones, like Ian and Barbara or even Stephen Taylor, might have made him get more grumpier? Because apparently he did get grumpier near the end, not just because of his illness increasing.
What year did he die? Was it 1975 he died?
Yeah, 1975 at the age of 67.
Yeah.
It's pretty young.
Yeah.
But he wasn't in good health. He had
But did he suffer from dementia or something like that, was it?
Yeah, dementia, and he had a series of strokes, but eventually he died peacefully in a sleep of heart failure.
Ah, of course. Which is the reason why when they were making the Celestial Toy Maker, they apparently had to find a way to explain his absence. It's something to do with invisibility, being made invisible, I believe, or something like that.
Because I know he wasn't well when he done the, is it the 5 Doctors? He was on screen.
Right. He was only on screen reading from cue cards. But I think in the Celestial Toy Maker, originally he was supposed to regenerate in that episode.
Ah, really? Blimey.
Yeah. But for some reason they rewrote it so that he would be on a bit longer.
I think that of course, that Verity Lambert had left, and there were like 1 or 2 in-between producers, I believe.
Yeah.
And that did not please him at all, because when she left, the last of the original people there who'd started with him were gone. He was, in essence, sort of like Tom Baker at the end of his time, being surrounded by youthful strangers.
Yeah, he didn't get on well with the new production crew, nor did they get on well with him. And that, plus his declining health, made him want to leave.
I see. But he soldiered on. He did, to his credit, sort of carry on.
Mm-hmm.
But that was technically, in hindsight, the start of what would sadly become far more worse as years go by. Hence why in the Three Doctors, even though it was supposed to be just like the upcoming 50th anniversary, and was supposed to have the first Three Doctors of the new series, his role was dramatically cut down to just being caught in this time eddy, time trap, whatever, and dispensing advice, which makes sense for the first Doctor being a grandfather, but it's sad really because you didn't get to see him really interact properly. If he was still in the state he was in 65, 10 years before, he would have had no problem at all.
Yeah. His appearance in The Three Doctors was his final work as an actor.
Holy crap. And I believe it took a lot of persuading and telephone calls with his wife to actually even make that happen. Basically, in a nutshell, his wife said whenever, people, who did, the producers, Barry Letts and stuff, they said if they caught William Hartnell on a good day, he'd be in a positive mood for it. But other days he wasn't quite entirely... He was frustrated. Some people with dementia and Alzheimer's get very frustrated and suffer depression, etc., because you're not in control of your faculties. And as an actor, you have to be in control of your faculties.
Right.
Must be very frustrating, especially for someone like William Hartnell, who is used to being in control of everything.
Yeah. Especially since apparently he was looking forward to reprising his role. It was his wife who said that he couldn't do it. He can't do a lot of things. He can't remember his lines. His health is deteriorating. But he was looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So presumably that's why he was happy to okay his return and have a big chunk. Even though he knew he perhaps wasn't physically able to do it, he wanted to do it in a sort of early version of fandom, I suppose, or something like that. Interesting. So, in closing, how would you both describe William Hartnell's first Doctor, in a nutshell?
Huh. Well, he was the adventurer. His doctor wanted to go on the adventure. Although the reason it started out in England was he just wanted to give Susan an environment where she would be comfortable.
How would you describe him, Steve?
You frozen, David?
Yes, how would you describe the first Doctor if you had to describe him to someone completely new to the early days of Doctor Who?
Well, he was an older Doctor. He was the one that, he was the first,
He was alien. He learned through his adventures to like humans. To warm up to humans, to allow humans to be friends. He hadn't encountered humans before, and at first he was abrasive towards him, and he even was going to kill the caveman until Ian stopped him.
Yeah, interesting. Well, for my personal opinion, William Hartnell's first Doctor was, like many of the Doctors, Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee, Tom Baker, Peter Davison, and Sylvester McCoy, and also the most recent ones, a Doctor and an actor basically coexisting at the same time. What you saw sometimes was literally how William Hartnell was. You know, he was a emotionally damaged person, a child born between two worlds, the old Victorian, modern 20th century, which shows again in his portrayal of the First Doctor, but with a mischievous, mysterious glint that even today, embellished more so by Patrick Troughton, is still used by many Doctors. He was, by all accounts, someone who at times could be very difficult to get along with, emphasising his demons, if you like, but also someone who truly did care about the part, even though he didn't actually start off particularly enjoying or believing in Doctor Who. But quite simply, in the same way that Patrick Troughton helped the series continue, John Pertwee helped the show to be reborn, the first reboot, if you like, he gave the Doctor life. Without him being a success, potentially we wouldn't be sitting here now. We wouldn't be asking Doctor Who 50 years later, but, oh yeah, Doctor Who, that show that used to be around in the early 60s but didn't go very far, you know, if another actor had played. And, yeah, if it, you know, may seem old and slow like the First Doctor, but the simple fact is, Unearthly Child, like the show itself, is basically one of the greatest pilots ever. Completely fresh 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later. And that's why it is and has lasted so long, all thanks to one man, amongst others, William Hartnell. Until then, That's the Way It Goes. Thank you for joining us, and these have been
Jimmy Porto,
Stephen Price.
Thank you, and goodbye. Keep hooing.
Bye.